Jagannatha, the avatar of Vishnu, is the main deity of Orissa. What's his story? Let's explore the origins of Jagannatha. Oldest record of the traditional stories of the origin of Jagannatha comes from the Skanda Purana, section 2, chapters 7 and 8. Actually, long after Krishna left the earth, Indradyumna instructs a Brahmana named Vidyapati to find Vishnu. The Brahmana agrees and sets out on a chariot, covering the great distance until he arrives at Kalinga, or Udradesa. When Vidyapati saw the people of Ekamraka forest holding a conch, discus, clubs, and lotuses, he began to contemplate and meditate on Vishnu. Then a Shabra named Vishvasu greets Vidyapati and offers him food. Vidyapati says he is seeking Vishnu. As it turned out, however, Vidyapati was secretly keeping Vishnu as Neelamadhava in a secret location. Not wanting to reveal the location of Neelamadhava and not wanting to anger Vidyapati, Vishvasu took the Brahmana on a long and difficult journey to the site of Neelamadhava in the dark. Having seen Neelamadhava, the two return, and Vidyapati explains that Indradyumna will come to the location. When King Indradyumna came to the location of Neelamadhava, he only saw golden sand. Later, he dreamed of the Lord, and the Lord instructed him to build 4 idols out of wood. The story goes on that Indradyumna had Vishvakarma to build the idols on the condition that he is not interrupted. However, Vishvakarma was interrupted, and thus the wooden idols were left half-finished into their current forms. There are 2 clues to the historical origins of Jagannatha. First is the wood, and next is Shabras. The Shabras are an Austroasiatic tribe in eastern India. Modern descendants include the Saura. In fact, it's from the Sanskrit Shabara that we get the word Saura. Related groups include the Mundas and the Santals. They originally lived in the forests, and some still do, and nowadays they have taken up agriculture. They're of an animistic religion, and it is interesting that these people are mentioned in the Puranas. That is because the cult of Jagannatha originated amongst them. One evidence to support this is that there are a group of people called the Daitas that work in the Jagannatha temple. They are called Shuddha Savara, or pure Savara, and work alongside Brahmins to perform rituals to the Lord. They partake in a ceremony called Navakalevara, in which every 12 to 19 years new idols are carved out of neem wood. The idols are of Jagannatha, Balabhadra, Subhadra, and Sudarshana. Just by the look of the idols, you can tell that they are tribal in origin, though let's not be hasty to assume. For sure, let's look at the religion of the Austroasiatic people. These people believe in spirits called Bungas. They also believe that their ancestors are said to inhabit the earth and interfere in human affairs. Disease is caused by malevolent spirits that need to be appeased, but they also believe that they are spirits hiding in nature, like in mountains, trees, and rocks. Essentially, they're animistic. They also believe in a supreme creator called Singbanga or Takurajiu, who is a supreme spirit, also a sun god, though some Santals, older ones, object to this identification. Major evidence comes from their rituals. Modern Shabras are a bit Hinduized, though, but we can see traces of their native religion. Their chief deity goddess is Mangala. Documentary, they worship her in a form of a rock with crudely carved faces on it, in connection to trees. As not only do they worship, but they also worship the rocks under the tree that they put there. As these tribes did not live in permanent settlements, they switched from these rocks under trees to worshipping pillars made of the tree woods. Effectively, they were worshipping tree logs from time immemorial. The case, they were worshipping these logs, as A. Sterling, as an account of Orissa, writes about these tribes. They are said to worship certain forms of Devi and Mahadeo, or rather the Hindus so interpret the adoration paid by them to a few natural objects such as stumps of trees, masses of stone, or clefts in rocks, which an impure imagination may discern some resemblance to human organs of generation. Some are fixed in small villages called sorasais, others lead a migratory sort of life, clearing annually spots in the middle of the jungle, where they erect huts of sticks, leaves, and grasses, and sow different sorts of grain of the millet kind, as the jowar, bajare, makke, mantle, etc., which sprout up with extraordinary luxuriance in such situations. Point I want to identify is that they were worshipping stumps of trees. Failed to make a connection with Jagannatha, suggesting that this log worshipping thing did originate amongst these Austroasiatic tribes themselves, the Shavaras, and that the Hindus later adopted it, and thus we get Jagannatha. This comes from another pillar cult originating in the eastern area, well before Vaishnavism and the subsequent Purushottama and Jagannatha cult took hold. Rulers of the eastern Deccan were worshipping a goddess named Stambeshwari. This place was a Shakta area, and anyway, the Shavaras' log worshipping culture must have given rise to two deities. Deities like Stambeshwara does find parallel in other tribes, reinforcing the view that this log worshipping culture of Jagannatha originated amongst the tribal population. Well, the Chenchus of Andhra Pradesh worship logs. Actually, these pillars or posts help contribute to the Narasimha cult, but it's more of the pillar aspect, and that's a topic for another video. The Goans make memorial pillars out of wood. These carved pillars depict the life of the deceased person. While I'm not saying that the Jagannatha originated from the memory pillars, I'm saying that I'm trying to show that the cult or practice of making pillars out of wood for religious or ceremonial reasons originated amongst the tribals and was inherited to the larger Hindu fold. Goans do worship pillars as goddesses and gods in their own right. The pillar you see above is that of Dharini Devi, or the Gond earth goddess. Later, Vaishnavism laid in the land. The earliest establishment of this worship of Vishnu was by the Mathura kings who lived during the same time as the imperial Guptas. Both the Guptas and Mathura kings were devout Vishnu devotees. Siloed Bauer rulers, who themselves might be tribal origin of the 8th to 9th century, were Shaivites, but some did patronize Vaishnavism and embraced it. The Baumakaras of the 8th to 10th centuries were Buddhists, but later adopted the Vaishnava faith. Further progressed by the rule of the Banja kings, and it further propagated by the king Chodaganga. Some sources might suggest that Ramanujan had an influence on the spread of Vaishnavism in Orissa, but what is certain is that Vaishnavism took a strong foothold in Orissa. Whatever is the case, we see that when these Hindu sects, mainly Vaishnavism, did enter in Orissa, they blended with the tribal cultures at the grassroots levels, in that amongst the Urja peasants and commoners living in the cities. After all, it is the commoners that mainly had interactions with the tribals, and hence it was them who took in the cultures of the tribals first. Of Hinduism, namely Vaishnavism, is so strong that the Goans call their sun god Narayan Pen, and Badadev, their main god, is sometimes identified, though with Shiva, with that sun god. The villagers who are Hindu and the Goans sometimes share a deity, such as that influence. Did you know that the word for heaven in Gondi is Vaikunt, like Vaikunta, and the Sauras themselves sometimes worship Lakshmi, especially on the Sohrai festival. In one account of the Manda creation story, Singbonga has a wife named Lakshmi. Several ways that the log-worshipping cult of the tribals entered Hinduism as Jagannatha. First is when Vaishnavism or any sect doctrine had reached the tribal level, the people must have identified the tribal log deities with Vishnu, as well as Devi or Shiva, and then the Hindu peasants, and by extension the Odia-speaking people, embraced the log forms of Vishnu and such. The second might be that the Odia-speaking people were naturally worshipping the Shabara log deities, and then they had identified these log deities with Vishnu and Krishna, and to which the Shabara simply accepted. From this syncretism, the Jagannatha cult originated. Another way of the diffusion might be that the Odia-speaking people were simply practicing the log worshipping of the Shabaras, but then some decided to make log deities, particularly of Vishnu, and that became popular, or some version of the three aforementioned might have happened simultaneously. Now this newly proto-Jagannatha cult later became popular, but before we look into that, let's look at the context of which these scenarios happened. Time of the composition of the Mahabharata, roughly in the Mauryan times, Odra was said to have a sacred site inhabited by mlechas covered in a forest. One paper I found attributes the naming of the place as Nilagiri, which is also a place mentioned in the Skanda Purana, and this naming was done by Adi Sankara. From Sharala Das's Mahabharata, written during the 16th century AD, it's revealed that this place was called Sundara Parvata. A paper I read says that Sundara is a corrupted form of Sindura. The place was called Sindura Parvata as evidenced by copper plate grains from King Chodaganga. More on him later. In regards to the famous temple at Puri, the best source we have about it is the Madalapanji, a 15th century chronicle of the temple written during the Gajapati rule and onwards. The place at Puri in the past was known as Purushottama Kshetra, and Purushottama is the name of Vishnu. The mountain a few miles northwest of Puri on which the Nidalamadava temple is located is called Nilachala, which reminds me of the Nilagiri of the Skanda Purana. Nilachala's earliest developmental occurred during the Somavanshi dynasty. The Somavanshis used the worship of Jagannatha as a way to legitimize their rule. In the reign of King Ananga Bhima Deva III of the 13th century AD of the Eastern Ganga dynasty, the general area became first time recorded officially as Purushottama Kshetra. However, that place in Orissa was known as Purushottama Kshetra for a longer time. The Vanaparva of Mahabharata refers to it as the place of Yagnavedi near the sea of Kalinga, which is Orissa. However, it was during Ananga Bhima Deva's reign that the Jagannatha became the patron deity of the land, point where the place was renamed from Purushottama Kshetra to Jagannatha Kshetra to please the populace. Another lesson on context. Prior to the advent of Vaishnavism, the place in Puri was a Shaktapita, and in late 10th century there was a shrine at Markandeshwara, a tank dedicated to the Saptamatrikas. Vimala, the goddess, was the presiding deity. Later, both Jagannatha and Vimala are seen as the presiding deities of the region, by the belief that the temple is protected by the Ashtashaktis. Puri then became popular during the reign of King Chodagangadeva of the 11th to 12th century AD. The Ganga copper plate grants mention that before King Chodagangadeva, the deity was not worshipped. The temple was being built, and Vishnu was ashamed of living in his father-in-law's, the ocean's, abode. Just that there might be a Purushottama temple by the seashore away from the modern Jagannatha temple. King Anantavarman Chodagangadeva of the 11th to 12th century AD, originally Shaivite, later Vaishnava, conquered the Kalinga region and then started the reconstruction of a Jagannatha temple. Earliest reference to the temple is found in the Dasagopa charter of King Rajaraja III, dated to 1198 AD, and the construction of the temple took 100 years and was finally consecrated by King Anangabhima Deva. What I'd like to emphasize is that this tribal cult of Jagannatha became popular among Hindu folk due to the influence of these kings that ruled Orissa. After all, a religious movement can only become truly popular when people in power manage to adopt those practices. Let's talk about the most famous aspect of Jagannatha, the Ratha Yatra. The Ratha Yatra is also known as the Gundicha Yatra. Gundicha might be the local word Gudisa or Kundicha, meaning wood. According to Oriya legend, Ratha Yatra first started when a queen named Gundicha, wife of Indradyumna, wanted to show Jagannatha to the low-status people who were restricted from entering the temple. The idol on wheels was a perfect way for this to be done. Earliest historical evidence of the Ratha Yatra comes from a 10th to 11th century drama where the Ratha Yatra of Purushottama is mentioned to have occurred on the seashore. The earliest depiction of the Yatra occurs on a frieze dating to the 12th to 13th century AD. The most famous rituals of the Ratha Yatra, besides the pulling of the cart, is the king of the land would sweep the front part of the chariot, and this was introduced by King Chodagangadeva. According to scholar O.M. Starza, this Ratha Yatra might have evolved from procession rituals being done by two Shiva lingas and Vaishnava pillars. From humble origins to a widespread worship, Jagannatha has captured the hearts of multiple Hindus and rightfully is named Lord of the Universe. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe.